Hello, everybody. Thanks for all your participation in my survey, if you will, regarding what you might be interested in with podcasts and information. It's going to take us a few days to get the podcasts up and running and produce. We're looking at the easiest platforms to have people access them. So please be patient. We're going to try to get those up in the next few days and weeks. Um, but in the meantime, I went through the requests of what kind of information everyone might be looking for, and I thought a good place to start would be kind of the genesis story of my experience in the beauty world, as well as where the term Daymaker came from. That came up quite a bit, people wanting to share that and understand more about it. So here we go, a little bit of history from David. Uh, so those of you that know me probably know this story pretty well, but for those that don't, I grew up in Hastings, Minnesota, on a small farm, and about as far away from the beauty industry as you could get. I remember my grandma. We're going over to my grandmother's house and having our hair cut till I was 14. And when I was 14, I went into this beauty salon and got my hair cut, and it was amazing because there was rock and roll music playing and beautiful people walking around. And the guy that cut my hair told me about the brand new white Corvette that he bought, and I thought, oh my God, this is it, right? So going through high school, I took accounting classes because I knew I wanted to open a salon one day, and I took art classes to train my eye. So from a very early stage, when I was 14, I decided I wanted to be a hairdresser. And I was lucky that when I graduated from high school, Horst had four salons at the time, and this was before he started Aveda. He was opening a beauty school on 19th and LaSalle in Minneapolis and in the Van Dusen Mansion. So if you know the Van Dusen Mansion, it's a beautiful mansion, but it was in a bad part of town. So we worked, the school was on one side, and Horst cut hair on the other side in the castle, we called it. And imagine 1977, he was getting $100 for a haircut, and people were, waiting for months to get in. There were 13 of us in the first class, and Horst was our instructor, and it was just crazy, magical. Um, because it was kind of in a bad part of town, when I graduated from school, I got my first job with Horst, and it was valet parking cars for those $100 clients. And I did it really, really well. I parked cars really, really well. I did it so well that clients complimented Horst on how I served them on, outside in the carport. So I got my inside job, which was literally working with Horst, and I called myself a human clippy because he would section the hair and I would hold it. And, so I was like right there watching these $100 haircuts go on. And what amazed me was not just watching him do $100 haircuts, but watching him be a master stylist. There is the difference between doing and being. He had a way of making every woman that sat in his chair feel beautiful, not only by how he cut their hair, but how he made them feel. And I picked up on that and I learned from that. So a few months later, I was training with him and apprenticing, and he said, I want you to go on the floor and develop your own clientele. And I decided that I really wanted to learn from some of his friends and the masters that were friends of his. So I took my car parking money and my shampoo money and my blow dry money, and I decided to go to Barcelona. I worked with Luis Longares in Barcelona, and then went on to Paris to work with the Jacques Dessange group and Bruno Pettini, and then went to London to work with the Sassoon group. So I ended up coming back to Minnesota. Horst had just started working on Aveda, and there were four salons at the time, and he said, I want you to go work in the Highland Salon in St. Paul. So I went from the castle to Barcelona to Paris to London, and then I ended up in the Ford Parkway Salon in Highland Park, Minnesota. And I walked in, and I almost walked out because of the four salons, it was in last place. And you could tell, it felt like it was in last place. Have you ever worked at a place that was the last place? Or you ever been in a restaurant and you go, oh, they're in last place? Well, it was palpable. I mean, I could feel it. And instead of walking out, I decided to stay and do what I could. So I brought in music from Europe. I brought in magazines. We started having soirees, and I started training the staff on some of the things that I learned. And I ended up becoming manager of that salon. And within a year, we went from last place to first place. And what was significant about it was the same people. I didn't fire half the staff and bring in a bunch of heavy hitters from other salons. It was just the same people that all of a sudden now had purpose. And it was just a magical time. It was one of those times that I was able to uh, discover my leadership abilities, if you will. And a little while later, I was named the salon manager of the year that year. This was 1982, and the vice president, he was an MBA, resigned to go work for Pillsbury, and Horst decided that he wanted to interview for another vice president of the company. So he brought all the managers together and he said, "What do you need? If I'm interviewing vice presidents, what do you need?" And I said, "Well, if I was vice president, I would do this and this and this." So a couple weeks later, Horst called me into the office and he said, "Okay, you said if you were vice president, you would do this and this." And I said, "Yep." And he said, "Okay, you're vice president." I was 23 years old. I didn't have a clue about taxes, liability insurance, inventory turns, all of that stuff, lease negotiations. I didn't have a clue about any of that, but I did know how to attract really great people, educate them well, and get them to care about each other and their clients. So here I was, 23 years old, and just living the dream. I couldn't believe it. And so I did that for 3 years. And when I was 26, I was sitting in a restaurant called Filio's on Lake and Hennepin in Minneapolis. Really busy corner. And across the street, I saw this guy putting a for lease sign in the window. So between my salad and my tortellini, I saw the for lease sign. I opened the salon that I did when I was 14. I walked across the street after lunch, signed a lease, and I went into Horst's office and I said, "I'm going to be opening a salon." And he said, "Where?" I said, "Lake and Hennepin." Well, Lake and Hennepin was like restaurant, hair salon, restaurant, hair salon. You go where the ducks fly, I found. And when I opened, I could have opened with a full staff. Everybody from Horst, most of the staff from Horst wanted to join me in my new salon adventure. And I didn't do that because I didn't believe in taking people from Horst. It's not the way that I feel about building a business. So a friend of mine, Rudy, moved back from Colorado to work with me, and we started hiring assistants out of the school. And we went from, I went from living in a penthouse downtown at the age of 23 to selling everything, opening my salon on a, bootstrap budget, and paying myself $13,000 a year for the next 3 years as we built the salon up. After 3 years, we were busting at the seams, and I was looking to open another salon. And Horst said, I really need to focus on Aveda. Why don't we become partners? Because you want to expand, and I need somebody to run the salons while I launch Aveda. So he and I became partners in 1989. And I bought him out of that partnership in 1991 so that he could focus on Aveda and I would focus on building the salons. 1999, I was blessed by Yosh Toya in California. He's like the Japanese Vidal Sassoon, very famous hairdresser. He called because he wanted to retire, so we ended up buying his location in Palo Alto, California. And I had Yosh in California. I had Horst Salons in Minneapolis, and I'm David. Then Estee Lauder bought Aveda, so nobody knew who owned what and what the name of it was. So we decided to change the name from Horst and Yosh to something not David, but what we do for people. So we had focus groups, and one woman, she said, "Well, I come here to have my bucket filled, so I fill my bucket so I can go and give it away again to my family, my friends, and my work." So we did a name search, and we found a Japanese word, juten. It literally means to fill. But I liked aesthetically, I liked how it looked better as jute. So we did a name search for jute and found that it means to uplift humanity and serve others. Boom. exactly who we are, what we wanted to be, and aspire to provide for our community. So, 1999, we changed our locations to Jute, and a few years ago, we expanded down in Arizona as well. So now we have 475 team members. And the reason that I tell that story is because if I wouldn't have parked cars really, really well, I wouldn't have gotten my inside job with Horst. And because I was able to get my inside job with Horst, I was able to be referred by him to Luis Longaris and Bruno Pettini and all the masters in Europe. So that's just the way it works. Something also significant happened 1986 when I opened my first salon. I really enjoyed doing hair, and I was traveling around a lot doing seminars for Aveda, being what we'd call a platform artist, and showing techniques and talking about the products and how to inspire people. So here I was down in Dallas, Texas, in 1986, and I brought my model out on stage, and I she didn't want a lot off, so I said, we're going to make her day, and I'll show you a new technique, but I'm going to make her day by not chopping all her hair off. So all of a sudden, I was doing this new technique, and she loved it, and her eyes lit up in the monitor, and people gave me a standing ovation for a mediocre haircut because she felt so great about it. So that's when I first spoke about making someone's day. So I was flying home that night, and this was 1986. I had big REO Speedwagon hair. Remember that rock and roll hair? Leather pants on, and I was just living the dream in 1986. And I was flying first class, and this gentleman sat next to me, a very conservative businessman, and he said, "What do you do?" And, I was looking at me. I'm sure he wondered, but I said, "I'm a daymaker." It's the first time I said it. And he said, "What in the world is a daymaker?" And I said, "Well, I make people's day." And he looked at me and he said, "Well, you must do it really well. You're flying first class." And I thought, wow. So the next day I went home and I changed my business card from stylist to daymaker. And I started handing it out to my guests. And they say, "Daymaker?" I say, "Yeah, I'm here to make your day." Oh, it was so cute. And I would be at a party and I'd give my card out. "Daymaker? Yeah, I'm a hairdresser. Come on in and I'll make your day." Oh, it was so cute. It was so cute for a long time. About 6 months, I was handing out my card and having fun with it. And then one day, a client of mine that came to me for years just for a haircut, she came in between haircut appointments just to have her hair cut for or her hair blown out for the night. So I said, you have something special going on tonight or something? And she said, "No, I just want to look good and feel good." And I was like, "Oh, great." So we had a blast for a half hour. I gave her a really great scalp, neck, and shoulder massage, great shampoo, and we just really enjoyed each other for a half hour. And when she walked out, she gave me this really great hug. And I thought, wow, I really made her day. I didn't realize how profound of a difference it was until a few days later. She actually sent me a card, and it said, "David, thank you for knowing what I was going through without knowing." And I was like, "What?" And so I read the card, and she said, "Thank you for being there without knowing how important it was." She said, "The reason I came in to have my hair done was because I wanted to look good. The reason I wanted to look good was because I was planning on committing suicide that night." She said, "I changed my mind in our half hour. I went home, called my sister, told her what I was going through. I'm recovering in the hospital now, thanks to you." Whew, oh my God. I still get chills now talking about that, thinking about it. That was 1986. And what I learned from it was, what if I wasn't there? Not physically, but what if I wasn't present? What if my car was broken down, or I was fighting with my girlfriend, or, all those things that allow us not to be present. But for some reason, I was present with her and I changed her life. I was able to contribute. The other thing that just amazed me was it could have, I had, say, 300 clients at the time. You could have lined all of my clients up. I would have never, ever chosen her as the one. She had it going on. She had a good job. She seemed, gregarious and, uplifted. And so I committed myself to treat every guest from then on as if they were the one. So my 9 o'clock the next day was the one. My 10 o'clock the next appointment was the one. So all of a sudden, something that I was really good at became something that I lived for. It was my purpose in life was to make people's day. How I was going to do that started by being a hairdresser. As I started talking more about it, I ended up going on a speaking tour with Deepak Chopra and Wayne Dyer. And I started talking to the general public about daymaking. And I noticed that they were all, clamoring for books and tapes from Deepak and Dr. Dyer. And they were coming up to me saying, "Where's your book? Where's your book?" And I was like, wow, I'm a high school graduate with a year of beauty school. I didn't know we wrote books. But I decided to take some time and write a book. So I wrote Life as a Daymaker. I didn't want it to be a theoretical book. I used to have 2 theories on raising children. Now I have 2 children. I don't have theories anymore, if you understand what I mean. So I wanted it to be about my life as a daymaker and the roles that we play. So my life as a daymaker is as a daymaker husband, a daymaker dad, a daymaker boss. We all have those roles we play. And I ended up publishing it, and it just took off and got on Good Morning America and became a bestseller the next week. So there's, millions of daymakers out there now that I feel so blessed to be a part of the same tribe and to have been a portal for that information that needed to come through at that time. So we consider ourselves at Jute Daymakers. We have 475 Daymakers at Jute. We each touch 10 people a day. So that's, 5,000 people a day that we touch. And we approach it in such a way with reverence that we want them to go touch 10 more in their day. So it's not just 5,000, it's 50,000 people that we can impact on a daily basis. And that's the magic of daymaking. So imagine now with the coronavirus and all the stress, and how can we be daymakers? It's being daymakers for our coworkers, it's being daymakers for our family, the elderly in our neighborhood, people that we know that are out of work, whether it's in the restaurant business, salon business. What can we do to make their day? So I'm going to be contributing more and more to that, but I thought I would start with the Genesis story about being a daymaker and where my history came from, so that there would be more of a context for those that aren't familiar with my history, so that as we roll out more and more podcasts, that there's a basis here that we can go off of. So anyway, thanks for obliging me. We're going to get through this. I know that it's stressful. We've been closed for a week now, and it looks like it may be another week or 2. Hopefully it won't be longer than that before we can hold people again. We consider ourselves in the business of doing sacred commerce and holding people, and really doing the work that the planet needs right now. So hopefully we'll be back at it as soon as possible. In the meantime, be kind to yourselves, be kind to each other, make somebody's day.